Republic's 2020 Gilbert Mayoral debate. I'm Maria Paletta, state government and politics reporter, and I'll be your moderator. Today we feature a discussion between Matt Nielsen and former town council member Brigette Peterson. Both candidates are vying to become mayor. They'll have a chance to introduce themselves in their own words shortly, but before we begin, a quick summary of how today's debate will work. Questions were proposed by a mix of Republic reporters and Gilbert residents. Neither candidate has had access to the list of questions ahead of the debate. Both candidates will have up to 1 minute to respond to a new question with opportunities for 30-second rebuttals as needed. At the end of the debate, each candidate will have an opportunity to provide a 60-second closing statement. Ms. Peterson will deliver her closing statements first, which means Mr. Nielsen will deliver his opening statement first. Matt, you have a minute to introduce yourself and share your vision for the town.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. My name is Matt Nielsen, candidate for mayor of Gilbert. I have 4 children. I've lived in Gilbert for about 6.5 years, a little over that. I have a master's degree in negotiation and dispute resolution with an undergrad degree in communications, and I've worked for the past 20 years in the private sector where I've been a small business owner. I currently work in the private sector in the education industry, providing services to charter schools like HR, IT, marketing, back office support for charter schools. And I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you. Brigette?
Hi, thanks for having us today. I'm Brigette Peterson, and I've lived in Gilbert for 25 years. My husband and daughter and I moved there and found a lovely home that we are still in today. My daughter has gone through Gilbert Public Schools, and while she was there, I was volunteering within our schools, and then I moved on to volunteering for the town of Gilbert. I served 14 years on the Gilbert Planning Commission after going through Gilbert Leadership, and then I served 7 years as a board member on the Gilbert Leadership Board. I decided to run for Gilbert Town Council in 2014, and then I was reelected again in 2018. Having served those 5 years on the Gilbert Town Council has given me the background that I need to take Gilbert forward and to step in on the first day and be the mayor of Gilbert.
Thank you. Just to build on those opening statements, Matt, I know you've previously described yourself as having a perspective outside the establishment, as you describe it. You're a political newcomer. Can you tell us why being an outsider, so to speak, will make you a better mayor?
Yeah, you know, as I talk to Gilbert residents, a lot of them are happy with where Gilbert is and where we've come from. Fewer of them, though, are happy with where we're headed, and a lot of that has to do with just issues of fiscal responsibility and things like that. And so my private sector experience will, I think, be a big help to the town of Gilbert, and I absolutely will leverage that and my formal education to the benefit of the town residents in Gilbert.
Thank you. Other side of that coin, you took us through your many years of experience, planning commission, town council. Why will being an insider make you a better mayor?
Thanks. Actually having the experience and having actually done the work before helps me step right into the role. I've served as a council member, I've served as a vice mayor, and I know how to run those meetings. For the years that I was on the planning commission, I spent 3 years as a chair and 3 years as a vice chair over those years. So I know how to run all of the meetings. I know all of the staff members. I know the team that we have working in the town. I know the stakeholders in the community, and I know hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of our residents. Every poll that we've done in Gilbert shows that the people love Gilbert that they live in. They're happy with where they live, and if they love Gilbert, then they should vote for me as their mayor.
You were in a primary with another candidate, Democrat Lynn King-Smith, in August, and she attracted a solid amount of support. I'm curious if there are any issues from her campaign that you found valuable enough to add to your own plans, and how you plan to win over her voters. We'll start with you.
Absolutely. I think that if Lynn hadn't been in the race, I think that those voters would have been my voters, because I believe that the residents of Gilbert see that I am able to work with all members of the community and not just one group that supports me or promotes me within the community. I have reached out to many of those folks and to many of those groups, and I feel like they have learned that I am their candidate for the general election.
Same question for you. Have you reached out to some of those voters?
Yeah, a lot actually, and also to Lynn herself, she's a great lady. I count her as a friend, and you know, a lot of those voters in conversations with them, are really interested in how the mayor will help small businesses and really take us forward and hopefully up out of the current crisis that we're in. And so I didn't necessarily change anything in my platform because those pieces were already there, and certainly reaching out to other groups as well and being inclusive in that way was already part of my platform. It's something that I've been focusing on, but certainly, got a lot of encouragement from them as well.
And we'll, of course, get to some questions surrounding the pandemic and the recovery here shortly. But before we do, I want to go to public safety. For months now, there have been weekly protests in Gilbert with crowds protesting systemic racism and police brutality on one side of the street, and then pro-police and pro-Donald Trump crowds on the other. What have you done to learn about the issues being raised by these groups, and what would you do as mayor to address them? We'll start with you.
Yeah, it's been obviously on a lot of our minds over the past several months, and certainly before that as well, just the issue of relations between groups. And this situation that we have down there at that intersection, I've been to several of those meetings, those rallies, and visited with the folks there. And I can tell you that on the whole, these are good people. They want to be heard. And my background professionally as well as in my education has taught me that that really honestly people want to be heard and listened to and feel heard, and feel that that's a strength of mine. It's something that I'll absolutely focus on going forward as mayor.
Actually first, let's go to you on that, and then I have a quick follow-up question.
Sure, thanks. I have chosen not to go down to the rallies on Thursday evening because I've had conversations with our town manager and our chief of police, and I have met with many of our police officers over the time that they've been down there. Our team is exhausted, and they're working hours and hours and hours and hours of overtime, and I chose to not go down there for the photo op so that I could support them. That's the way that I felt that I could support them best. I have reached out to both sides, and I had a meeting with Pastor Andre from the BLM side, but we had to cancel it because he had something come up, so we couldn't do that. So we're trying to rearrange that. But I felt that the best way that I could support them was to talk to the town staff and find out exactly what's happening down there. I've also met with several council members that have been down here, and many members of the public that have also been down there. So I stay on top of it.
Do you feel that in terms of the push for greater police accountability, that Gilbert has room to improve there or do better there, address that, and if so, what would you do to that end?
I think we all have room to improve on everything that we do on a regular basis, and I believe that our new training facility will facilitate some of that training going forward. I was very proud when Michael Soberg, our chief, published the training and all of the moves that they use for the police department that was asked for from the public, and we found that some of the things that were being talked about in other parts of the country had already been removed from Gilbert in the past, and many years ago, 8-10 years ago. I was very proud to see that, and I've talked to many of our police officers, and I've been with them on several ride-alongs over the years, and I have never encountered a situation with a police officer that I ever felt uncomfortable with, or the way that they've treated a member of our public. And I haven't had the public complaining to me about that in my 5 years on the town council either. But I think we can all improve everything that we do on a regular basis.
Matt, have you heard individual concerns about this issue, and was the training enough?
I think really our Chief of Police, Chief Solberg, and all of the officers in the department have really done a great job in handling this situation. It is a lot of work. They are getting tired, I guarantee that. I can tell you, though, that we have a really good staff at the police department, and who knows? It doesn't take much for a spark to be lit, and for things to get out of control quickly. Of course, none of us hope for that, and we'll work to prevent that. But I can tell you this, that I'm behind our first responders and certainly our police department every step of the way.
The current council, I know you mentioned outreach both on the law enforcement side as well as the community side. The current council has discussed creating a community relations committee to foster community dialogue, expand those conversations. Do you support the creation of such a committee, and what specifically would you like to see it do?
Actually, in September, I went to the council members and Mayor Anderson and asked them if they would consider moving that forward to get that started and get that rolling. Because we all know that when you start something up in government, it takes a little bit of time to make it happen. And so I wanted the community to know that we are listening, and that hasn't stopped just because our mayor had stepped down in August. And so I asked them if they would bring that forward. They discussed it at a council meeting. They're looking at the name Community Relations Board. I think that's probably a great start. And now we need to figure out what the parameters of that board will be, what the actions of that board will be, and what the makeup of that board will be. But I want to see that opened up to the community as a whole. I would love to see even some teenagers from our high schools participate in that, maybe one from each school district. I know that there are issues that the schools hear and that the students hear that we as adults definitely don't hear, so I want to make sure that that's all brought to the table too.
What are some of the specific issues or areas you'd like to see the committee work in, assuming that all gets off the ground?
Exactly. Thank you. I think that we obviously need to talk to our Black community and find out what issues they feel that they're having within Gilbert. What are they seeing for issues within Gilbert? We need to talk to our LGBTQ community and see what issues they're hearing and feeling within Gilbert. And of course, we know our schools have suffered a lot of suicides over the past few years, and I want to make sure that we hear from the teens and hear what they're feeling and seeing on a regular basis at their schools.
Thank you. Do you support creation of a committee like this? And on your end, what would you like to see them tackle?
Yeah, it's an important question. I actually formed my own community relations advisory committee to advise me in my campaign, and not just that, but at the outset of that, we planned it instantly. It was part of our initial conversations in the formation of this committee that this would continue on through my tenure as mayor. These people are my friends. They're my neighbors. They're, in fact, my family members. And what I mean by that is these people from diverse backgrounds are my family members. I care about them. All of the town of Gilbert, I know that we open with them with open arms. We welcome them and, of course, want to involve them as much as possible. And that's been the impetus behind the creation of this advisory committee that I formed. And we've had some very productive conversations that now we're ready to start taking action to actually improve the situation. And I'm committed to that.
This week, Gilbert Town Council voted to ban recreational marijuana sales in Gilbert if the ballot measure Proposition 207, which of course Arizona voters are going to consider in November, weighing legalizing the recreational use of marijuana if that ballot measure passes. Given the language of the proposition, though, the town could not prohibit Curaleaf, its only medical marijuana dispensary, from selling recreational marijuana. There are some concerns that the effect of this council action effectively allows one company to corner the market on this in Gilbert, assuming the measure passes in November. Do you agree with the passage of this ordinance, and why or why not?
I've worked with the medical marijuana group for a very long time as a member of the Planning Commission and as the town council, and I've toured that facility that Curaleaf owns in Gilbert. And most people wouldn't even be able to tell you that there's a dispensary in Gilbert because they don't know it's there. It runs so well. They're great neighbors, and I'm very proud to say that they exist within our community without any issues. I spoke to the attorney that came to speak on their behalf on Tuesday night at the council meeting, and she was for the passing of this. And I can see where people would think that it might create a situation like that. That happens to be the only dispensary that's approved in Gilbert. They would still have to be approved to be able to sell the new product within their facility. And I believe there's still availability to put a second dispensary within the town of Gilbert in a different location. And I think somebody already has the certification that's required for that. So we could potentially see another location. And again, Curaleaf would have to be approved in order to be able to sell that product there if Prop 207 passes.
Right. Your thoughts on this move by the council?
So I think whatever we do as a town council, as elected officials in the town of Gilbert, we ought to be even-handed and fair. And so that would be the first main priority for me, is that people get equal treatment under the law. And I would absolutely want to take a look at that to make sure that that's the case for everyone.
So there are some concerns then with how it's framed right now, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that that we're not favoring any one party over another, and I don't think it's fair. So we just need to make sure that we're being careful about that.
Moving on to finances and the town's financial situation. Gilbert, of course, is generally known for its conservatism, including when it comes to town spending. Would you say that the town is in a good financial position right now? And if not, what are some areas of concern for you?
Yeah, I think that generally the town is in a good financial position, but as has been mentioned, we can always get better. And there are plenty of examples of that. I'll just mention one here, that on May 5th, there was a preliminary budget hearing held in the town chambers where the preliminary budget was passed in a vote of 5-2, and then that was ultimately adopted in a subsequent meeting for this fiscal year. Mm-hmm. Part of that budget included the addition of 82 new positions to town staff. If you remember what you were doing on May 5th and how you were feeling about your job, and how you were feeling about your friends' jobs. They were being furloughed and laid off, and small businesses were going under, and it was just a lot of uncertainty in the air. I think it was absolutely inappropriate for us to not just consider, but then pass a budget that increased town staff at many of those positions, not all. There were a few that I would have voted in favor of, those additions, but there were a few that were totally inappropriate.
Your response, your thought on the most recent budget and the town's financial position right now.
Sure, I'm glad this was asked because it is important to pass a budget, and you have to realize that you're passing that budget every year for a year in advance. And when that budget was passed, it was explained explicitly that those 82 positions would not be put into effect until the town met certain tiered levels of requirements in order to start to approve any of those positions. And the most necessary would be the first ones that would be approved, such as public safety. So we would start with the lowest tier and then go to the second tier and the third tier based on the financial position of the town, based on sales tax, based on all of the money that they would be bringing in as a community over the next year. If those positions were not included in this budget, they wouldn't be able to be discussed or included until next May or June when the next budget discussion begins. So I thought it was imperative for the town to do that. I was really impressed with how they came up with that tiered system and said, we won't hire any of these people unless we make this point.
Could I follow up on that?
Yes, I was going to ask, does the tiered
okay?
system address your concerns in any way by prioritizing public safety and then going on down from there?
So it could, but the way that the tiered system was set up, it does not address it sufficiently, and I'll tell you why. Because 60% of all of the positions that were proposed, the 82, they fell into the necessary category, and they could have gone through regardless of what happened in the pandemic. And that's troubling because I can tell you, because I've gone through all of those 82 new positions and what they are, their job titles, their pay, and their job descriptions, and I can tell you that there's no way that 60% of those were absolutely necessary. So I would have questioned those, of course, prior to the meeting and asked for a lot of clarification there and some help in getting those pared back.
Would you like to respond?
I would say that our team does such a great job in their zero-based budgeting every single year. It's played like Hunger Games. It's the best description that I can give you. They have to come in and fight for the positions that they want to add. And they have done this relentlessly for the past 8 years, I believe it is. Those positions have to be approved by many different levels before they even make it to the budget discussion as a possibility of being on that budget for the council to see.
Any further comment?
This is why it's so important to have a person with a lot of business background, because zero-based budgeting sounds good until you know how that's actually implemented in each organization. I can tell you that that's fine to say that, but when it comes down to it, there are at least 2 positions that pay over $100,000 base wage, unburdened with health benefits and other ancillary benefits that were added as part of those 82 new positions. And horrible timing. Shouldn't have happened.
Can you elaborate on which positions you're uncomfortable with or feel are inappropriate at this time?
So there are several. I'll mention two because I mentioned two. I'll give you specifics on those two. One of them pays over $109,000 every year base wage. This person is a volunteer coordinator. They will get paid $109,000 base wage to coordinate volunteers in the middle of a pandemic. The other position is a wellness coordinator. This person gets paid $120,000 a year base wage, unburdened with benefits, and their job is to make sure that people are taking their pills on time, that they're setting appointments with their doctors, and sending out newsletters related to their benefits. We could have lived without those couple of positions in the depths of an unprecedented pandemic.
I want to move on. The town was expected, speaking of the pandemic upending some plans, was expected to ask voters for a $465 million funding request to improve traffic congestion in roads, but that was delayed because of the pandemic. Officials are currently planning to take that request to voters in 2021. Do you support that property tax request?
It hasn't been decided if they'll be taking it to the voters in 2021. That will be up to the members of the new council. And there's several new members since it was discussed previously. We put a transportation group together with representatives from 9 different segments of the town of Gilbert, and they came in with ideas and how best to move this project forward. If we as a council decide to put it on the ballot, then it gives the residents the opportunity to decide whether or not they would approve the bonding for the roads and transportation. We do not have a primary property tax in Gilbert, so the best way for us to bring funds in to make these different changes within the community is by bonding. We have worked so hard to be fiscally conservative that we are number 41 in the country out of 19,000 cities and towns for our credit rating. And in doing so, we can do bonds at a much lower level and cost to the residents. So it's lower financing and it saves us money in the long run.
I believe you've said that your default position would be no new taxes. Do you support sending the question to voters and letting them decide?
Yeah, I would absolutely support something like that. And look, the fact of the matter is, Gilbert residents, like most residents of most municipalities, they expect to have nice roads to drive on. They expect that their water will turn on when they turn on the faucet, that water will come out. They expect infrastructure to be well maintained and to grow as the population grows. So yes, I'm absolutely in favor of, now I want to be smart about it. I want to make sure that the 495 is the right number, that we're rolling that out in a very responsible way. And again, this is where I'll leverage my professional background to make sure that the taxpayers are getting the best value for their dollar.
Okay, continuing on with the pandemic. A town commission study 5 or so years ago, I believe, showed that Gilbert lacked enough services for vulnerable residents. So that included survivors of domestic violence, people with low to moderate incomes, and some older residents. What do you feel the town has done to meet those needs, considering that those groups could be particularly vulnerable right now, and should officials be doing more?
So, we have some really wonderful nonprofit organizations that are set up specifically for that. We also have just an amazing group of faith leaders in the area that come together on a regular basis to address those exact needs. I would love to continue to build their capacity, and to work with them to make sure that we are addressing those needs as much as possible. Because look, they deal with these individuals on a daily basis. They know them by first name. They work with them and help them. And I'm absolutely excited to continue, because I've already started having those conversations with these great people that do this wonderful work. I'm excited to continue that with them.
Just a quick follow-up. Is there a place, do you feel, for the town to step in, though, when it comes to vulnerable residents, either with certain groups or in certain situations like the crisis we're in right now?
Yeah, and we have in a couple of different ways. There's been some CARES money that's been distributed, and I think a lot of small business owners that are just right there on the brink have been helped by that. I know that they've been helped by that. There are other resources that do go out. About $500,000 every year goes out to these groups, these nonprofit organizations, to help them serve these vulnerable populations. So yeah, we are doing some things right now, and we certainly need to make sure that we keep up on that, because if Gilbert is known for anything, we're known for our sense of community, and we need to make sure that we maintain that.
Your thoughts on this? Is the town doing enough to help these groups?
I think we can do more. And I think that what we've done over the past few years since I was on the town council has helped. But the first thing that we put into effect was the Heritage Center, and that's run by Dignity Health and Ascend, and there's other organizations within the building providing services for the residents in the area that need those. So we took an CDBG grant and refurbished the building a bit with that grant, and it's a building that the town of Gilbert owns, so we provide the land and the landscaping, the electric, and that sort of thing. And then we do donate to a couple of those nonprofits that serve our residents within there. I believe that the CARES Act money will help these organizations continue on right now, because I know it's been very difficult for them to raise money as a nonprofit. But I think that we can do more. Our cities and towns around us comment that our homeless get sent to them because we don't have any place for them to go. We have no shelters for anybody that's involved in a domestic violence situation, so they're all going out of town.
Both of you have mentioned CARES money and federal relief. Are you satisfied with how the town has been spending or planning to spend that money?
I am. I watched along the whole entire process, and I was talking to several of the council members that were involved, and I wanted to make sure that a chunk of that money got to our businesses. I think they've taken the hardest hit, and quite honestly, if our businesses aren't doing well, the town isn't doing well. So I wanted to make sure that they were taken care of, and then our nonprofits, like I said, it's been very difficult for them to raise money during this time, and understandably, our families are having a difficult time, our businesses are having a difficult time, and they're not able to donate like they normally would. So yes, I did, and like I said, I followed along quite closely because I wanted to see exactly where those funds were going. I think we were a little late on that, though. I think it could have been done a little faster.
Your thoughts there. Are you satisfied with how the town has been allocating that federal relief funding, or is there a different way that you would do that?
Yeah, no, I think they've done a great job, actually. Councilmember Yentis has done fantastically well with that, and led that effort very well. She is a very capable person, and I think that her leadership definitely shined through on that effort. I want to mention one other thing, that in mid-August, when I formed the Community Relations Advisory Committee, I also at the same time formed a small business advisory committee, and made up of small business owners from around the town of Gilbert. And we meet on a regular basis to largely talk about this kind of thing. What do small business owners need? What do they need help with? And I've been encouraged by what we all know about Gilbert is the giving nature of the people there. They've been so willing to donate their time, to donate their expertise to the betterment of the community.
Brigette, you mentioned residents experiencing homelessness. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what you two think about the town's role before residents get to that point, whether it's through affordable housing options, or given the current crisis, possibly helping them avoid evictions, foreclosures. Of course, the governor has that moratorium in place, mm-hmm. but the rent bill comes due at the end, so a lot of people are concerned about that.
Right, and I think that's where our nonprofits and this CARES Act money will come in, because I think that CARES Act money will filter to the nonprofits, and the nonprofits will help the residents that need that. We have a lot of really proud residents in Gilbert that aren't going to come out and ask for those funds, but these organizations are set up there for them to specifically come to them and ask for those funds. I know it was discussed Tuesday night at the council meeting too, the shut-off process for the town of Gilbert bills, and I know other organizations are having those conversations. Those bills are still adding up, but we're not adding fees to them to try and help any way we can.
Right, and to the affordable housing point, do you feel the town has a role to play there in ensuring that there are some options?
I think that's a difficult position to be in for the town. I think that we have a growing community that we don't have. We have brand new multifamily coming in that's priced very high, and it's priced to meet the market. And we have a very low percentage of multifamily in our community. So it's very hard for the town to get involved in something like that. And as a fiscally conservative community, it's a very difficult position to be in.
Your thoughts on affordable housing? Is there a place perhaps when plans come before the council for some of these developments?
Yeah, so I can tell you, because I saw some information recently specifically on this, and in particular on Section 8 housing. There was a communication that I received. I had requested information on the number of Section 8 housing certificates that are given out to residents in the town. And the number that was given is that anywhere from 70 to 80, period, 70 to 80 people are given or issued Section 8 housing vouchers at any given time. And so that's the number. We have 70 to 80 people exercising that option for themselves in our entire population of 262,000+ people in the town. And so the truth of the matter is that these nonprofits that are already operating are so much better and so much more efficient with dollars. I would really, I'm excited to work with them to make sure that they have the resources for these folks.
Everybody's favorite pandemic topic, masks. Many Valley cities still have their mask mandates, in place in addition to the Maricopa County mandate. Gilbert, however, let its mandate lapse in mid-July. If you're elected mayor, would you be willing to reinstate that mandate, assuming that it's needed?
I would prefer to stay under the county. I think it's easier for our residents to understand when it's a county-wide, because we have residents that live in Gilbert, work in Mesa, live in Gilbert, work in Scottsdale, live in Gilbert, work in Phoenix, and I think it's easier for them to understand that it doesn't have boundaries. It's going to be the whole county no matter where you are. And I've been to other parts of the state of Arizona recently and noticed that there are not mask mandates in their counties. And so that was what made me think of this, is that I would prefer to let it stay under the county. I do know that there may be a request to bring it back to Gilbert, though.
And if the county, I know we're getting a little bit hypothetical here, but were to let its mandate expire and you felt that Gilbert still needed that, at that point, would you be willing to consider stepping in?
I would not prefer to do a mandate. I would prefer to do a recommendation that our residents follow and let them decide on their own what's best for them. A mandate to me implies enforcement, and I don't want our residents to feel like they have to have enforcement to wear their masks.
Mask mandates, where do you come down on that?
So I've been very clear about this for a long time. I'm not supportive of mask mandates.
Do you support those recommendations, at least?
I support individuals who, so for instance, if an individual asks me to wear a mask because it would make them feel more comfortable, I will honor that request. If a business owner asks me to wear a mask in order to come in and be a customer of theirs, and I want their product bad enough, then I will wear a mask. I'll honor their request. I don't feel that it's the role of government to mandate masks.
Okay. You mentioned employers. Moving on to job growth, where do you stand on giving incentives to attract or retain employers when the town is working to build jobs, whether that's tax credits or other types of incentives?
You know, Gilbert is such an attractive place anyway. We have really, you know, the track record in Gilbert has been so good about just attracting big names to not just employers but developers, and that is because it's such a great town. And so I would really prefer not to use incentives to, you know, in order to attract them. We're attractive as it is, and I'm sure that we don't really need that. I think we can continue to work with these folks, and that they're tripping over themselves already to get into Gilbert because it is such a great place.
Your thoughts on incentives? Have there been times when you were serving on the council where it made sense to do something like that?
Absolutely, because we are an attractive location, but so isn't everybody else in this valley. The East Valley and the West Valley especially do a great job at bringing businesses in, and because our governor has done a great job at saying that we're open for business, everybody wants to come to Arizona. So how do we get them to decide to come to Gilbert? Sometimes you need a little bit of a carrot to do that, and we have done that in Gilbert. And we've brought thousands of high-wage jobs to Gilbert through Deloitte in Northrop Grumman, and that was the way that we accomplished that, because we weren't the only city on their list. There were other cities on their list, and one happens to be right next to us, who I love, our city of Chandler, our sister city of Chandler. And anything I can do to steal a business from Chandler, I'm going to look at those options.
What types of incentives are you comfortable with? I know every proposal is different, but generally speaking.
We have offered different incentives, such as traffic light infrastructure for Northrop Grumman. We've offered some some money to Deloitte to bring in some high-paying jobs, and they guaranteed that they would be local Gilbert residents getting these jobs.
Are there any situations you could see where it'd be appropriate to offer something like that?
Yeah, the biggest issue that I have with these kinds of incentives is really the tax breaks, because what that does is it burdens all of the taxpayers more in order for them to have a job at all, where a lot of these people already have jobs. So I'm not necessarily against incentives that would involve infrastructure improvements, things like that, because those have to be done anyway. But it's assumed that every company, every organization is paying their taxes and their fair share. So I would not be in favor of that generally. Just as a general rule of thumb, I would say tax breaks, no, with some potential wiggle room there depending on the situation, but my default would just be no. But infrastructure, things like that, I would be open to that.
When it comes to the residents who would potentially get some of those jobs, do you feel the town is doing enough right now to support workforce development? And that's K-12, higher ed, and development-specific programs.
Yes, I do. I have worked specifically with our Gilbert Chamber of Commerce on this also, and we've got several programs that they do. One is Tours for Teachers, to bring teachers into our local businesses so that the teachers can see exactly what those business owners want and need from a workforce, and then they can go back to their students and say, hey, why don't you think about this? Or I think you'd be perfect for this. And it really has helped, and I've attended even the final class for those teachers when they're done with their program, and to hear the stories that they've told and the ways that they've brought it back to their classrooms, it's really enlightening, and I want to continue programs like that.
What are your thoughts on workforce development and support for education?
We are so fortunate in Gilbert. We have some really great educational options for kids. Everything from our public schools, our district schools, to charter schools, private schools. We have micro schools, homeschool, very vibrant homeschool community, several co-ops around town. I'm a strong proponent of school choice. And the great news for Gilbert residents that isn't news, it's for a lot of people, that's why they moved to Gilbert, is that we have a lot of options. And so kids can be very well served from any of these. And all of those things, all of these options are important to develop our workforce. But we have such a solid foundation when it comes to education that Gilbert residents can feel and do feel confident in the opportunities for their kids going forward.
Where would you suggest or like to see folks build on that? I know you talked about the solid foundation, but going forward, what more could be done? Should there be a shift in focus in terms of how they're divvying up some of this resources or the types of industries they're focusing on?
Yeah, it's a great question. And a couple of things that I'll mention, and really the main one is CTE courses, career and technical education courses are such a great resource and so attractive to kids and to families. We could use a more robust offering of those. I can tell you, some of these kids, when they graduate, they will entry level with a certificate in welding, with a certificate in JavaScript, computer programming. They'll be making more money than the teachers that just taught them in school. And that's pretty exciting for kids that want to work with their hands or want to do something technical. So I would like to see more of that. We already have a lot of great options, but I think there's some room there to get even better.
Is there some room to expand when it comes to CT? I know that's also been a focus of our governors the last couple of years.
Absolutely, and I think that we need to remember that not every kid is cut out to go to college right out of high school, and there are opportunities for them within our community. There are businesses right now that need welders, that need plumbers, that need air conditioning specialists. So for the students to be able to find those things, and the businesses to come out to the schools and talk to those students firsthand and be able to let them know exactly what that company can do for them at this point in time to help move them forward and become a regular part of that company and a solid employee.
Okay. I want to jump to some reader questions here, make sure we have enough time. One reader asked, what do you expect to be your biggest lobbying effort at the state legislature on behalf of Gilbert residents during your first year in office? Start with you.
During my first year in office lobbying, so my mind goes right to Prop 400 because that's been a big discussion for us, and I know that it will potentially be on the ballot for 2022 and even probably called Prop 500 at that point in time. And that's the half-cent sales tax for Maricopa County that will provide the funding for infrastructure and a lot of projects that are not just for Gilbert, because Gilbert has a good long list of maybe 100 of those projects, but something that I want to be able to come in and fight for the region, because I say all the time, the good things that happen in Gilbert are good for Queen Creek and good for Chandler and good for Mesa, and the good things that are happen in Mesa and Queen Creek are good for Gilbert. So we need to make sure that we are regional partners in that and focus on the things that can happen in the East Valley for us.
Have you endorsed any candidates in the legislative races this cycle?
I have not.
No. Okay. What would be your focus when it comes to bringing the concerns or top priorities of Gilbert to state legislators?
So if I can, I'm going to add not just state legislators, but also the Corporation Commission. You know, they're an important piece of the machinery that moves at the statewide level, and certainly, you know, Gilbert being in the top 6 municipalities as far as population in the county and certainly in the state, we have to have a seat at those tables and make sure that our voices are heard so that the residents' needs are met. Corporation Commission, legislature, they need to be aware of our needs when it comes to infrastructure and specifically around water and power, and we have great utility partners in that effort, certainly. But you know, we get water from 3 different sources in the town of Gilbert, and all of this involves the water district, the Corporation Commission, and the legislature. Everyone has to work together in order to make that function correctly.
And have you publicly supported any candidates?
I have.
Okay. And who have you endorsed or supported?
So in LD 12, which is our legislative district, I've endorsed Warren Peterson, Travis Grantham, and Jake Hoffman.
I know you mentioned when you were talking about CTE that some students that went into those professions might be immediately making more than their teachers. Not everybody is happy about that fact. When it comes to teacher pay, of course, we have Invest in Ed on the ballot this November. Obviously, we'll have to see what happens with that and how the funding is divvied up. You talked at length about how great Gilbert's education system is, but do you think that there is room for improvement there? Is teacher pay or education funding, given how it's struggled a bit to come back after the recession at the state level, something that you may lobby for?
Yeah, you know, teacher pay is a perennial issue, and that's a problem that it hasn't been addressed in a way that's productive so that it's not a perennial issue. It would sure be nice if our teachers were paid at a rate that's reasonable. And that's why I'm not supportive. I know you didn't ask this question, but I'm not supportive.
It was going to be a follow-up question, so you can go right to it.
That's why I'm not supportive of Prop 208, because in the way that you even framed the question, you said it's unsure as to how those monies will be distributed. And that's true. We don't know. But the proposition does not specify who will get the money. And that's problematic for me, because teacher pay should be at the top of the list, but there's no guarantee in the legislation that will happen.
And with that, are you talking about specifically, because my understanding was that it's sort of broken out the categories, but not necessarily, this school district or this classroom?
But even, the way that they break these out, if you go to the National Center for Education Statistics, you can pull all of this information down. It shows you, it breaks out these positions by administrator, teacher, and other. And this proposition, it's not right to call it a legislation because it's not a legislative bill. It won't go through that process. It's a different process, of course. It does not specify that some percentage must go to teacher pay. And what is that number? And that's problematic. That's why I can't support it.
Do you think there needs to be more funding for education and teachers?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it's one of the things that I considered a run for legislature last fall for about 5 days. And then I saw that I didn't think Mayor Daniels was going to run for re-election, so I stayed in Gilbert where my absolute heart is. But I definitely believe that our teachers need more pay, and I believe there has to be a different mechanism in place to make that happen. Anytime that we pass a proposition in the state of Arizona, it is almost impossible to change. And so when we always get those unintended consequences, and there always are, we won't be able to change those. The legislature won't be able to change those. The governor won't be able to change those. And so Prop 208, I can't support it. And because of those issues, I'm generally against all propositions because of the same reason.
I've heard those concerns among both of you and others, but there are plenty of voters, not directly in the education system, who feel like the legislature has had time to do this and hasn't done it to the level that they're hoping to see for their families, for their kids and students. And especially now with the pandemic, teachers who are helping with hybrid learning are facing even greater risk. So what would you say to those voters, and how would you sort of approach that conversation?
Make sure you vote, and make sure you vote wisely, and make sure that you vote for people that are going to support education and education funding. I think that's the biggest and best way that we can make a change is, and the governor's plan set out last year, I think is still in process. I don't think we've seen everything that would come out of that plan yet. So we need to see that happen before we pass yet another proposition.
Okay. Do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I will, yes. I'll just say that if voters are seriously concerned about making sure that teacher pay, because this issue isn't really about education pay, it's about teacher pay, because that's the way that it's billed every single time. So if it's really about teacher pay, then and you're really serious about it, then we should change the proposition language to address that issue. Now, I'm not supportive of the process of the propositions that we do here in the state anyway. I think those are they're, as has been mentioned, they're so difficult to change. I would rather it go through the legislature, but if that's your main issue, teacher pay, then let's get the language right.
Do you see you personally, have you identified other gaps in terms of funding? Because you're right, teacher pay often dominates the conversation, but you also have some facilities that are falling apart, support staff that isn't necessarily paid adequately in their opinion and the opinion of families in the district.
Yeah, all of that's an interesting point. There was a study that was done twice. It's been repeated. So the first time that it was run, I want to say it was in 2009. And there was a follow-up to this done in 2016. And the latest data that they have for this as a result of when it was run is through that date. But I can tell you that, and by the way, this was performed by Ben Scafferty out of the University of, Kennesaw State University in Georgia. I can tell you that administrative positions and pay have outpaced teacher positions and pay and support staff positions and pay for the last, and this is crazy, so brace yourselves, for the last 30 years, they have outpaced just administrator pay and positions have outpaced those other two by a factor of 5 in one case and 7 in the other. And we need to make sure we're taking a good look at that.
I want to get to another reader question here. We haven't addressed this issue yet today. The reader says, I haven't heard either of the candidates talk about climate change or how horrible the air quality is, not only in Gilbert, but most of Arizona. We've all seen those warnings from ADEQ about air quality, especially in the summer. What would you do as mayor on these fronts? We'll start with you.
So certainly we want to be efficient with our energy. That's getting better all the time with improvements to home building, which of course influences or affects energy use. It also, cars continue to get better and better and better with emissions. And so I think we can absolutely encourage that. I've been, just encouraged and honestly more than impressed, beyond impressed with the ingenuity and the sometimes just giant leaps forward with electric cars and things like that. So I'm excited to see that continue to progress and see where it takes us.
I know you both are very pro-business, so same question to you, and I'll elaborate a little bit in terms of balancing business interests with the concerns of some residents, public health, sustainability, and moving forward. How would you approach that?
So I've already worked on this as a part of the Planning Commission, as a part of the Town Council, is that we don't require builders to do things because it's very costly for a developer to look at green measures within their developments. But we recommend that they do. So anytime a developer or builder wants to choose to do that, they can. There are other things that we've done with the Town Council. We did a deal with SRP to use solar power with them, and those are the relationships that we need to build to make sure we as a town, number one, are doing things as a community, and then that trickles down to our residents. And I think in turn that trickles down to our businesses because so many of our residents are business owners. And I know that the county supervisors always get in trouble because they have to put out those no burn day notifications and nobody likes them, especially the week of Christmas when you have your family in town. And those regulations are coming from federal down, and Arizona is quite a different state and environment than some of the other states, and I would like to look at federal rules and regulations changed for Arizona.
Great. Anything you wanted to add on that end? All right, and then we also have a question here for each of you. We'll start with you. You've talked about the need for Gilbert to grow responsibly. What are examples of how you'd guide Gilbert toward responsible growth?
That's a great question. When I first moved into Gilbert, the population was projected to be around 350,000, and now we've projected maybe about 330,000. So we still have a ways to go. But because of smart building that we've done, we have cut that back about 20,000 people. We need to make sure now, as we're facing build out, we're going to have a lot of infill projects, which will be a piece of land that's behind things that doesn't have any frontage to any main road. So we have to really watch those carefully and how those can develop best. We have to make sure that we keep an eye on our commercial development, our light industrial development, our business park development as we grow as a community. And so we have to be looking at every single project individually, but then always looking at our town as a whole.
Okay. And for you, Matt, the question is, I believe you've mentioned this on your website and elsewhere, that you want to prioritize individual liberties. Question is, can you provide some examples of how you would do that as mayor and what you're referring to there?
Yeah, great question. We've talked about it already, at least the first one that comes to mind, and that's the mask mandate. So, there are just some things in life that government has no role in and shouldn't have a role in. And there's one, in my opinion, personal health choices or personal choices, what you wear in public. In my opinion, should not be mandated by the government. So that's one quick example on that issue.
Okay. Is that the primary one, or are there others in mind when you talk about that point?
That's the one that was in my mind as I was typing that piece up. So, but really anything where the government really shouldn't have a role in determining your personal life choices. That's what I mean when I say individual liberty. I'm talking about your personal life choices. Those are your business, and there's no reason for the government to get involved in those issues.
Okay. We are rapidly running out of time here. I want to make sure that you both get time for closing statements, but very quickly before we get to those, what would you tell voters is the most important difference or differences between you and your opponent? You can each do that in 30 seconds, that would be wonderful.
Sure. I've experienced at this job already because I've served on the Planning Commission, because I've served on the Gilbert Town Council, I've served as Vice Mayor. I have attended every meeting since I was off council. I've attended in person and by WebEx when we couldn't go in person. I find it's important to tell people that I have kept up on everything that's going on in the town since the day that I stepped down from the Gilbert Town Council to run for mayor. I have met with our town manager. I have met with our police chief. I have talked to police officers and firefighters consistently.
Thank you. And you, biggest difference between you and your opponent?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple. The first one is just my professional background. I've been a small business owner. I know what it means to go home at night wondering if you're going to be able to make ends meet, and I know what it means to make a great success out of your small business. I've worked day in and day out on that front. I continue to meet with business owners around town and get their feedback and input on how we can help them from the government side at the town to do their best and to succeed.
All right, thank you. As I said, want to make sure you have enough time for closing statements, so you have 60 seconds. Anything else that you want to add and share with voters?
Great, thank you. I just want to say that I have been there for the tough conversations and the tough discussions over the years. I have a voting record that proves that. I have been there to add thousands of high-wage jobs to the town of Gilbert. I have been there to change the tax rate from $1.15 down to 99 cents. I've been there when we've sold bonds and paid off bonds and saved our constituents millions and millions of dollars. I love and care about the town of Gilbert. I have shown that and proven that over the past 20 years of service that I have provided to the town. I want to step in on day one and be a full-time mayor to this community as it grows and starts reaching build out over the next 4 years. I also know that 4 years isn't just about me being mayor. We're looking at 10 years and 20 years down the line. So if you love Gilbert as much as I do, then vote Brigette Peterson. I am the proven choice.
Matt, your closing statement?
Thank you. I'll say this. Being there for tough conversations and being there as other people lead efforts isn't going to get it done for the town of Gilbert moving into the future. We've been through some difficult times. There's no doubt that we'll be through some difficult times in the future. And we need someone that can lead, that has led, and that has a proven track record of leadership. By her own admission, my opponent never led an initiative during her time on the town council. That is a problem. I have led, do lead, have been a small business owner. I'm executive vice president. I've been a CEO. I've been a COO. And I'm looking forward to leveraging my experience to the benefit of the town of Gilbert. Thank you.
Did you want to rebut that?
Yes.
And then if you have any additional thoughts, I'll of course give you time as well.
That's great. One moment I was asked a question and couldn't think of something off the top of my head. I have led initiatives in the town of Gilbert, one being right when I came on the town of Gilbert to condense the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board. That has saved developers money, has saved the town money, has saved everybody time. It's one of the things that I wanted to do immediately because I came from the Planning Commission and I knew exactly what needed to be done as a new council member.
Any response there, or any response to any other concerns or questions that people have brought up about your candidacy?
Nope, I don't. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you both so much. That's it for the Arizona Republic's Gilbert Mayoral debate. Thanks so much for watching. For even more information about local, state, and congressional races, you can always visit azcentral.com. Thanks again, and have a great evening.